I never thought a simple complaint about my dog could turn my quiet neighborhood upside down. One day, a knock at the door changed everything. My neighbor, furious, claiming I'd broken every rule in the HOA book. But what happened next? Hidden cameras caught something no one expected, something that could ruin her reputation forever. Every notice, every fine, every petty rule suddenly felt like a trap designed just for me. And now, as I face threats and escalating demands, I can't help but wonder, what lengths will she go to when the truth comes out? The sun had just started creeping over the rooftops, painting the neatly lined houses of Maplewood Estates in golden light. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked perfect in brochures. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, and streets so quiet you could hear a bird's wings flap from a block away. To outsiders, it was flawless. To me, it was home. My family and I had moved here 5 years ago, drawn by the promise of safety, community, and a place where our daughter, Lily, could ride her bike without worry. Life was simple, predictable, and peaceful, or so we thought. I had always been the type to follow the rules. The one who mowed the lawn at precisely the same time each week, who picked up every leaf that fell on the sidewalk, and who smiled politely at neighbors while keeping to myself. My husband David shared the same mindset. Quiet, reliable, never looking for trouble. We loved our home, but more than that, we loved the calm and the certainty that came with living in a place where everyone seemed to understand boundaries. Life moved in its gentle rhythm, morning coffee on the porch, quick waves to passing neighbors, afternoons spent gardening or helping Lily with homework. Evenings were the best. Family dinners, laughter echoing through our living room, and the occasional visit from friends who always remarked on how peaceful Maplewood felt. It was, in every sense, the life we had envisioned. Our house wasn't extravagant, but it had charm. Brick facade, modest garden beds bursting with seasonal flowers, a small white picket fence that Lily loved to run alongside. Inside, it was warm and welcoming, the smell of freshly baked bread often wafting from the kitchen. Shelves lined with photo frames chronicling birthdays, vacations, and milestones that seemed insignificant at the time, but now feel like precious markers of a simpler life. Our neighbors were, for the most part, friendly. The Johnsons down the street often waved during morning walks. The elderly Mrs. Harper would hand Lily homemade cookies whenever we stopped to chat. Even the younger couples, busy with their careers, offered nods and smiles. There was a rhythm, a sense of quiet camaraderie that made even ordinary days feel meaningful. And then there was the dog. Max, a golden retriever with a heart as big as his paws, had been with us for 3 years. He was more than a pet. He was part of our family, a constant companion for Lily, a friend for David and me. Max had a routine as precise as ours: morning walks, a midday nap in the sun, evening playtime in the yard. He never barked excessively, never caused damage, and was as gentle as a cloud. To us, he was harmless joy, an anchor of normalcy in our otherwise orderly world. But as idyllic as Maplewood felt, it wasn't without its rules. The HOA, though quiet in our early years, had always hovered in the background like a shadow you knew existed but hoped never to meet. Most of their restrictions seemed minor: fence heights, paint colors, lawn standards. In the beginning, we complied without a second thought. It was easy to see the logic. They wanted uniformity, an appearance of perfection. I admit I even took pride in following the rules. There was comfort in compliance, a reassurance that as long as we stayed within the lines, our lives would remain uninterrupted. And yet, there were whispers, subtle yet persistent, tales of neighbors fined for small, sometimes ridiculous infractions, stories about long, tense letters from the HOA demanding changes, shrubs trimmed to an exact height, mailboxes painted to precise specifications, even doormats replaced if they didn't meet some unwritten standard. I had always listened to these stories with a polite smile, grateful they weren't happening to us. We were cautious, respectful, and always careful to do what was asked. But a seed of unease was planted nonetheless, a tiny shadow in the back of my mind that said, maybe this calm is fragile. Our immediate neighbor, a woman named Karen, was polite enough at first. She had moved in the same year as we did, always impeccably dressed, with a smile that seemed friendly but somehow never reached her eyes. Karen had 2 children, perfectly groomed and well-behaved, just like everything else in her life. From the start, she appeared to embody everything Maplewood valued: order, precision, propriety. She would chat briefly over the fence or nod during neighborhood meetings. But there was something about the way she watched, calculated, that felt off. Subtle glances at our lawn, small comments about the color of our flowers, the angle of the fence. Nothing overt, nothing anyone else might notice. But for me, a quiet tension began to grow. There was a sense that for Karen, life in Maplewood was a competition, not a community. And though I didn't know it yet, she had her eyes firmly set on our house and on me. Life continued its familiar rhythm, blissfully unaware of the storm on the horizon. Max ran in the yard, Lily practiced her bike tricks, David tended to his garden while I cooked dinner. We had small, happy routines. Weekends were filled with barbecues or trips to the nearby park. Evenings were cozy, predictable, the kind of ordinary comfort that makes a home feel sacred. Yet the very perfection we cherished was about to become our undoing. The delicate balance of peace, routine, and respect in our neighborhood, so carefully maintained, was about to be shattered by the smallest spark. A complaint that would ignite a chain reaction we could never have imagined. It started with something minor, seemingly inconsequential. A note slipped under our door, terse and clipped. Excessive noise from dog. Immediate attention required. Failure to comply may result in fines per HOA regulations. I remember reading it and thinking, what noise? Max hardly barks. Yet the words, though small, carried a weight that made my stomach tighten. A first warning, the beginning of a series of escalating demands, all rooted in the HOA's rigid, often absurd rules. And buried in that note was another element I hadn't yet recognized: Karen's influence. She was behind this complaint, I was certain of it, even if I couldn't prove it. Her quiet vigilance, the slight smirk when she passed our yard, the way she seemed to appear whenever we did anything outside the ordinary. It all made sense now. Someone was watching, judging, and willing to weaponize the rules to assert control. That note changed everything. Suddenly, the neighborhood felt different. The same streets, the same manicured lawns, the same friendly waves now seemed like a stage on which every action we took was scrutinized. Max's happy barks became potential evidence. Lily's laughter in the yard felt like a provocation. Even our garden, once a source of pride, seemed a liability under the piercing eyes of Karen and the watchful, unyielding hand of the HOA. What had been home now felt like a battlefield, one where we were unprepared for the rules, the politics, and the petty power plays that lay ahead. Little did I know, the events set in motion by that one complaint about my dog would unravel months of calm, expose secrets and force confrontations I never thought possible. Every knock on the door, every letter from the HOA, every whispered comment from neighbors became part of a growing tension that threatened not just our peace, but our sense of justice and dignity. And standing at the center of it all, watching as the walls of normalcy began to crumble, I couldn't help but ask myself, how far would someone go to enforce control? And how far would I have to go to protect my home, my family, and the life we had built? It started with small, almost laughable rules, the kind that seemed ridiculous when you read them, but felt suffocating when enforced. The first fine arrived a week after the note about Max. Grass exceeds HOA mandated height by ½ an inch, it read. ½ an inch. I measured it repeatedly, triple-checked with a ruler, but yes, the edges of our lawn were just slightly taller than the official guideline. A $50 fine payable immediately. I called the HOA office, polite and measured, explaining the discrepancy. The representative's voice was flat, rehearsed. "Rules are rules," she said. That was it. No discussion, no compromise. Just a cold reminder that every action in our yard, every leaf out of place, every stray blade of grass could be weaponized against us. Then came Karen. She showed up at our door one Saturday morning, clipboard in hand, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I just wanted to check on a few things," she said. Behind her, her kids rolled their bikes past the fence as if rehearsing for a perfect photo op. It was subtle yet calculated. She asked about Max, about our garden, about the exact angle of our mailbox. I tried to remain cordial, to answer with a simple, "Everything's fine." But there was an edge to her questions, a judgment, a silent threat. I realized then that she had transformed our friendly neighborhood into a minefield, and I was walking blind. The fines continued, multiplying faster than I could track. One letter demanded that our hedges be trimmed to the exact 42-inch height dictated by HOA policy. Another insisted that our walkway be power washed because minor discoloration violated community aesthetic standards. Each note carried a subtle sense of urgency, a warning that failure would escalate to more severe penalties. And behind every letter I could feel Karen's eyes, her silent monitoring of every move. There was no direct confrontation, no argument in public. Just constant pressure, rules enforced with surgical precision, designed to erode my patience and sense of control. I tried to comply, of course. David and I spent hours adjusting, trimming, cleaning, repainting, but every adjustment seemed to create a new violation. We planted flowers in a slightly different pattern, and suddenly the HOA informed us it did not match community design standards. We hung a small bird feeder, and a neighbor complained that it was unsightly. Every small act of normalcy felt scrutinized, dissected, and judged. The world we had loved, the comfort of our home, was shrinking under a weight of absurd, relentless enforcement. Meanwhile, Max became a focal point of the dispute. One afternoon, he barked at a delivery driver who had parked too close to our gate. Minutes later, another note appeared. Excessive barking reported. Further incidents may result in additional fines. I remember holding the note in my hand, the paper trembling slightly as I read it, the frustration and disbelief building. Max was harmless. He was family. And yet somehow he had become evidence against us in a silent war we hadn't asked to join. I couldn't understand how civility could disappear so quickly, how a place that once felt like sanctuary could turn hostile over rules that, at first glance, seemed trivial. And then came the public embarrassment. Then came the turning point, though I didn't recognize it at first. One evening, I was outside watering the garden when I noticed Karen lingering near our fence, phone in hand, pretending to chat while pointing subtly toward Max. My heart pounded. She was documenting, recording, ready to report any perceived violation. That was when I realized this wasn't just about rules. It was about control, power, and dominance. Max, our dog, and our small family were pawns in a quiet, relentless battle waged by someone with far too much time, influence, and an appetite for dominance. From that moment, every interaction, every fine, every note took on a new dimension. This was no longer merely compliance, it was survival. We documented everything. Photos of freshly trimmed lawns, videos of Max being calm during walks, receipts for garden maintenance. We replied meticulously to every HOA email detailing compliance and citing specific rules. Each response felt like a match thrown into a forest fire, igniting small skirmishes with administrative representatives who seemed more interested in asserting authority than resolving conflict. And through it all, Karen's influence was omnipresent, a constant shadow making even the simplest tasks feel fraught with danger. The stakes kept climbing. One afternoon, an inspector arrived unexpectedly, clipboard in hand, notebook ready. They circled our property, pausing at every corner, scrutinizing every flower bed, every fence post, every inch of lawn. I felt trapped, watched, and vulnerable. Even neighbors who had once waved or smiled seemed to avert their eyes. Was it sympathy, fear, or curiosity? I didn't know. What I did know was that the tension, once subtle, had become a tangible, heavy force, pressing down on our home, our peace, and our sense of dignity. And just when I thought we might catch a small break, the HOA escalated again, sending another letter. Unauthorized structure noted. Fine will be doubled if not addressed within 7 days. My mind raced. What structure? Our small garden bench? A doghouse? Everything we owned suddenly became a potential violation, a reason to levy fines and assert dominance. I felt rage bubbling beneath the surface, anger at the absurdity, at the injustice, at the fact that our peaceful lives had been hijacked by rules manipulated by a vindictive neighbor and a faceless HOA bureaucracy. It all came to a head at the HOA board meeting. I presented every piece of evidence we had meticulously gathered. Photos of our lawn and garden, videos of Max behaving perfectly, correspondence documenting our compliance. The projector illuminated each proof point while Karen sat across the table, visibly flustered, her smug composure cracking. Board members leaned in, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock as the truth of her manipulations became undeniable. I felt a surge of vindication, a mix of relief and triumph, as the rules, once used as weapons against us, now exposed the orchestrator of the harassment. After the meeting, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The fines were rescinded, the complaints withdrawn, and the HOA reprimanded for mismanagement. Our little corner of Maplewood felt like home again. The garden bloomed more vibrantly than ever, and Max ran freely in the yard without fear of being evidence. David and I spent afternoons tending to flowers and trimming hedges, while Lily rode her bike laughing as Max chased after her. The neighborhood, once a stage for scrutiny and tension, felt quiet and warm again. Every familiar detail, the mailbox, the trimmed hedges, the sunlight on our lawn, reminded us that perseverance and careful documentation had won the day. After the meeting, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The fines were rescinded, the complaints withdrawn, and the HOA reprimanded for mismanagement. Our little corner of Maplewood felt like home again. The garden bloomed more vibrantly than ever, and Max ran freely in the yard without fear of being evidence. David and I spent afternoons tending to flowers and trimming hedges, while Lily rode her bike laughing as Max chased after her. The neighborhood, once a stage for scrutiny and tension, felt quiet and warm again. Every familiar detail, the mailbox, the trimmed hedges, the sunlight on our lawn, reminded us that perseverance and careful documentation had won the day.